Good evening. Welcome to Mission Uplift. I am so glad that you are here. Whether you're watching live or on the replay, it is always a joy that you would stop by. Tonight, I'm here to chat about lessons on rest and rhythms that I've learned through chronic illness. Just a few lessons. And let me preface by saying I haven't arrived. I'm still learning. But throughout the course of the summer, we are going to talk about rest and rhythms and spiritual practices. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I start by sharing a little bit of my story? This is something that I am passionate about. It is something that I love to share about. And I am excited to be able to be on this journey this summer with all of you. If this is your first time visiting, my name is Jen. This is the Mission Uplift YouTube channel. And Mission Uplift is all about uplifting stories, uplifting truth, and uplifting community. And we do that through podcast episodes and discussions on YouTube. Sometimes we have a teaching series. We just finished in April and May. We walked through John and explored the different I am statements of Jesus in that gospel. And that was just such a rich experience. And so we are taking a break from a series, but we are not taking a break. And so we have the podcast, we have YouTube, and uplifting community. And we do that now. We're starting something brand new with Patreon. And we are looking to, once we meet our goal, start a book club within our Patreon community, hopefully this fall. And so feel free to stop by there and check that out for more information. But most of the time, our podcast episodes or YouTube lives are with guests who teach and people who talk with us. And so I wanted to take the time just to share a little bit about my journey. I have been waiting for this theme on uplifting rest and uplifting rhythms for a while. And part of it is that I recognize that many people, especially many ministry leaders, often struggle with self-care, with burnout. And as a pastor's kid, as a pastor's grandkid, I also worked for pastors, probably about 4 different pastors over the years. I have witnessed up close the toll that ministry can take when we do not prioritize rest and rhythms and spiritual practices to be with Jesus, to slow down and be with Jesus. And so my desire, my heart, my passion is to help leaders, especially ministry leaders, to prioritize rest so they are leading from a place of rest. And I have seen how it is so worth it. And I have experienced it. And I still find myself in places where I need to go back to basics to experience it again. Some of you know, I was accepted into a doctoral program that focuses on spiritual direction and formation. And so this is a journey that I'm going to be on for a little while and something that I love to be able to share as I'm learning. But this passion that I have was actually birthed from a place of great pain. And it's a place where I still live and experience this tension in real time. And I actually haven't felt well in my body for a really long time. I have had all kinds of symptoms here and there. And since I was a young adult, and over the years, I didn't think much of it. It seemed like isolated, unrelated issues. And when you're 20 something, chronic illness is not the forefront of your mind. It wasn't on my mind. In fact, my 20s were fighting a lot of other things, dealing with insecurity and self-worth issues after a divorce and experiencing this fog of depression and just battling all kinds of lies that came along that the enemy would throw my way in the midst of those kind of hardships. And so I really beat myself up a lot of times when I felt weak physically, not having the capacity that I thought that I was supposed to have, or the capacity that others around me had or appeared to have. I just knew that something wasn't quite right inside of me. And I always associated it with my circumstances, some of the things that I shared, or even thinking like, hey, I'm not good enough. I don't have the capacity that maybe other people have. And so I would push through and do what I had to do to go to work and be involved in ministry and appear like I was able to do it all. It wasn't even something that I was conscious of. I wasn't fully aware that I was doing it, but there was like this push for me to be normal, right? But what is normal? What is normal? And I can tell you that what was not normal was the modeling of rest, because it's so countercultural. Were people around me getting 8 hours of sleep a night? Maybe. But were they slowing down? I don't know that many people around me were. And I was not a part of a circle where that was just even talked about. And I'm not even talking about the pace of the world, right? I'm talking about church, Christian circles. It's just something that rest, all I knew of it was sleep, right? The whole slowing down concept, slowing down to be with Jesus, was not something that I really understood. And so over the years, I'm in my 40s now. This was during my 20s. There were ups and downs and seasons where I would have all kinds of crazy symptoms at once. I don't recall ever having like a ton of energy or feeling awesome, but it was better. And so, better is better than bedridden. And so in those seasons where things weren't as bad, I would try to make up for lost time. I would push myself and try to do the things that I didn't have the strength to do in those more difficult times. And then I would crash, and it was like a hamster wheel that I would find myself on. And years later, I started having more symptoms that began to overlap, and things just became more and more difficult. And yet God is amazing, because he has given me the strength to do much more than I ever thought that I could in my own strength. It's been, when the Bible talks about in our weakness, his strength is made perfect. That has become so real to me in my experience. But life is hard. I will be very honest with you. My life is very hard. I don't have a lot of energy. I have a lot of strange symptoms, and it has affected my everyday life down to the point where I resigned from working a regular 9 to 5 and require just a lot more rest. So on this journey, I have learned how important rest is. And in this experience of my need for physical rest, I began to explore the need for spiritual rest and resting in Jesus. And I realized that it is so important for everyone to really embrace this reality, especially as believers in Jesus Christ. And here's the thing: you don't need a chronic illness to learn about rest or to implement rest in rhythms. In fact, let my experience be something that is an instrument, is a tool for you to be able to experience it. And so I just wanted to start the summer off with our theme of rest and rhythms. I wanted to start the summer off sharing just some of what I've learned physically and that carried over spiritually, because it really is all connected. I mean, God created us mind, body, soul, spirit. And so there are some things that on a practical level I have experienced. And one is that I needed to slow down, right? We live in such a fast-paced culture, and I needed to slow down. My body was not at the same capacity that it had been in the past. And so it meant that the pace that I was once able to go at, I couldn't anymore. And so I have learned to slow down because I physically had to, right? But I also realized that slowing down physically doesn't always mean slowing down mentally, right? My body could be resting, but my mind could be going 100 miles an hour. And that mental intensity spills over into everything, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And so last year, the beginning of 2020, simply resigning from my job and getting more sleep wasn't enough. I was realizing that it was about more than that. It was about more than just sleeping a few hours more. If you've been around the Mission Uplift family for a little while, you've heard me talk about a book that has impacted my life greatly. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I see Faith is here tonight, and she was a part of a group where we read this book. I read it probably 3 times last year. And it is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And it's a phenomenal book. I encourage you to read it. There's so many powerful things in that book, just how love, joy, and peace are incompatible with hurry. And that's a whole other nugget for a whole other day. But he says how hurry is violence on the soul, and not the body, but the soul. But it's so countercultural to slow down, right? Yet it's crucial. And so slowing down and finding a new rhythm is something that in my own life, because of my physical limitations, I have had to do. But then I began to explore the importance of finding rhythms and a slower pace for all of us, right? To really slow down and be with Jesus. Am I functioning at such a fast pace and getting so caught up in what I'm doing that I'm not recognizing the importance of being with Jesus? And is my doing for God more than my being with God? And another great book is Emotionally Healthy Leadership, Spirituality, and Now Emotionally Healthy Discipleship by Pete Scazzero. And he talks a lot about this as well. It's another, I love to drop book recommendations, but these are books that have really impacted my life. And so slowing down, I mean, when you think about it, Jesus did not go fast. When you read the Gospels, he wasn't running full speed. He took time to be present. He had his own rhythms. He took time to go away to solitary places, to pray, to rest. And I'm sure that there were people who were probably annoyed by that, right? Because there was always a need. People always in need of healing, people who were in need of just an encounter with Jesus. And he modeled for us the importance of slowing down and finding a different pace and a rhythm that works. Now, another thing that has become very real to me, another lesson, is the need to establish boundaries. And now let me preface by saying, I'm not talking about building a 6-foot brick wall, right? I'm not saying isolate yourself, but I am talking about boundaries, because there is something about being able to live within the parameters, and that may look different for different people. I know in my own life, in my own physical boundaries that I need, I learned that I need to listen to my body, right? And ultimately listen to the Holy Spirit to discern what that means for me personally. A practical example, and again, Faith is here, and Faith knows if I were to go out late or even stay up late on a Zoom call, it will affect my sleep for days and sometimes weeks. And it can snowball into migraines and heart palpitations. And then that snowballs into discouragement and depression and sometimes anxiety. And I mean, I'm talking about like recently. And it's ridiculous and it's annoying, but it's my reality. And so I have learned that I need to have certain boundaries of time in order to protect me physically, but that also spills over into my spiritual life. Now, some of my closest friends know that about me and know the importance. And so they are kind enough to say, hey, Jen, it's getting late. You should probably sign off. And I really appreciate that. Not everyone necessarily gets it. And I don't fully get it, to be honest. It's just a strange thing. But I have learned that every single thing I do requires that I count the cost. And it took me a while to figure that out. I know at the beginning of the pandemic, I was participating in a lot of really great late night prayer meetings that were on Zoom with my church, and I really enjoyed them. And I would really be struggling throughout the day and in the week physically. And after some time, I realized, you know what, I have to try and slow down and kind of detach from screens and in order to really slow down and establish those boundaries for myself. And I have realized, and I've said this before, that there is such liberty in acknowledging my limitations. And I actually have a podcast episode on uplifting limitations, which, I have gone back to refer to myself. Like last year, Jenn encourages this year, Jenn. But it's really important to be able to know what boundaries we need, and not just physically, right? This is something I've learned through chronic illness, but I'm learning now spiritually. And for every yes that we say, there needs to be a lot of no's. And I'm realizing that a lack of rest means a lack of abiding. We just heard about abiding in our Uplifting I Am series. My mom taught the final message on I am the true vine. And so she talked about abiding. And if I'm not rested, I'm not necessarily clear to be abiding. Now, that doesn't mean, everything has to be perfect and I have to be on 100% energy, because that does not happen, right? But I'm realizing that resting, and that's not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, creatively, resting helps me to be able to abide. But when I have a lack of rest, there's a lack of abiding. And a lack of abiding ends up becoming a lack of trust. And I, just speaking from my own life, I have begun to see the thread with this, because sometimes I look at my discouragement and I realize I'm not really trusting God. I'm not really trusting God with everything, but I didn't see the thread, how rest was a part of that. And so just as my staying up late, snowballs into a mess, right? When choosing not to rest. And that's sometimes hard because I want to do things, I want to spend time with people. I'd love to go out, and it doesn't mean that I don't do things at all, but it just really means counting the cost, and realizing the need to look at everything big picture and how rest affects everything. And rest can be so many different ways. It's not just taking a nap. It's not just getting a few extra hours of sleep. It's spiritual rest, emotional rest. Sometimes it's turning off all the screens, right? Because of sensory overload. Sometimes it's spending time with people, right? Because there's a certain rest that comes with spending time with someone who we can really fellowship with and be encouraged by and encourage them. Sometimes it might mean taking a walk and just detaching from the everyday. And these are things that I'm still recognizing that I need to do, because I don't necessarily always do them, but everyone's different, right? And seasons are different. And so what might have been the right thing in a particular season of rest, that may change too, because we're constantly changing. Our circumstances are changing. People have different seasons that, it might be with young children. It might be with, caring for someone who is ill in your home, or just various circumstances that maybe we can't necessarily do things that the way we used to, but there's still ways that we can slow down. There are still ways that we can establish those boundaries. And there are still ways that we can make a point to set things up in such a way so that we are living our lives resting and abiding and ultimately trusting in Jesus. Jesus modeled rest. Like I said, he modeled rhythms. And in Mark 1, in the first chapter of Mark, it says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. And then it says, Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, everyone's looking for you. And then Jesus replied, let us go someplace else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. And then it says that he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in the synagogues and driving out demons. Now, just before that portion of scripture, he had been healing, doing a lot of healing. And so he decided, He was going to go off while it was still dark and go off to pray. And this wasn't just like a one-time thing. This was a part of Jesus' rhythm. This was a part of his rest, his getting alone with the Father. And ultimately, as a result of this rest and rhythm, like Jesus always was on mission. He knew why he came to this earth ultimately. And, you know, when we rest, there's something for us too. When we rest and when we're abiding and we're trusting, we know what we're called to do, whether it's like, hey, this is what I need to do today. We might not see big picture. I certainly have many question marks about things in my own future. I'm sure that we would all love like a gigantic syllabus that breaks down everything in like a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan, right? But we can know what we're to do even on a practical when we're resting, when we're abiding, when we're trusting. And we all need to position ourselves. And so that may look different. And so over the course of the summer, we are going to talk with different people who are going to share their rest stories. We have some testimonies, a few people actually, who experienced burnout and what their journey was like. And over the course of the next few months, we're going to hear what people's rest stories are, what their rhythms are like. And in doing so, hopefully that will be an encouragement to you to really begin to implement rest if you're not already, or even be willing to ask, like, what does that look like for me in this particular season? Where is there an area in my life where it's important that I slow down? Where is there an area perhaps where it's important for me to establish boundaries? Where is there an area where perhaps I'm not trusting? Is that lack of trusting because of a lack of abiding? And is that lack of abiding because of a lack of rest? And so I just wanted to share a little tiny piece of my story, just a few very, very basic things that have opened my eyes up to the importance of rest, not just physically. In fact, physical rest was probably the easier part. I knew how much I could do. I knew and know and continue to learn what my limitations are, right? But the resting in Jesus, the resting, the slowing down to be with Jesus is something that I'm still learning. And I'm grateful that he has extended that invitation to us. You know, in Matthew 11, he says, come all who are weary, and I will give you rest. And he says that he'll teach us. And so it's not like he's like, hey, you're tired. You don't know how to figure this out. You know, go, you know, you're fired. Or he invites us. He invites us to come to him when we're weary. He is the one who will teach us. He is the one who models what that is. And his yoke is easy. His burden is light. And I hope that over the course of this summer, that you would be willing to open your heart up and ask the Lord, what would my rest journey be? What should my rhythms look like on this journey? Because there's something really powerful when we slow down to be with Jesus, and when we are discerning what the Spirit is saying to us in a particular way, and that we are not living life based on what we do, but who we are in Christ. And I'm passionate about that, passionate about us walking in who we are in Jesus and slowing down to be with Jesus and seeing what happens. Like there are so many treasures and surprises, and I'm always blown away how God surprises us with his goodness in those moments. But I wanted to also, as we're kicking off the summer, I wanted to share with you a few rest resources. And so the first one, I have a picture here for you. I want to share with you about this Rediscovering Rest digital silent retreat. This is a great resource, and this is something that I have benefited greatly from. Last year on the podcast, I had the opportunity to interview Laura Murray, and she's a spiritual director and an author. And we talked about uplifting rhythms. And if you haven't had the opportunity to listen to it, I definitely encourage you to check that episode out. And she regularly hosts digital silent retreats. And it's something that she offered at the beginning of the pandemic, and it has grown into something that she provides for people now several times a month. And it has grown to such a degree that she has a team of hosts and facilitators to assist in these digital silent retreats. And I am actually one of the hosts who is part of her team. And I have learned that taking time to sit in silence is powerful. It is a powerful spiritual practice. It's part of the slowing down. And taking time to process this in community is also something that is very powerful. And so you may be asking, like, what is a digital silent retreat? And I'll give you a little synopsis. Everyone who signs up to be a part of these digital silent retreats, all participants are given a guide ahead of time, based on what the particular theme is, and their guided content and scriptures. And at the start of the retreat on a Saturday morning, everyone comes and gathers on Zoom and welcome and introduce themselves and participate in the first practice together, and then take a break to go off by themselves for 90 minutes and to sit in silence and solitude with Jesus and with that particular content. And so it's no iPhone Bible, no journaling your thoughts on your computer. It's pull out your actual Bible, hard copy, in your journal, put your phone on do not disturb, tell your family, tell your roommates that you're unavailable for a few hours. And in this time, it just has been so fruitful every time I have walked through this experience. And sometimes I've gone through every single sentence of the guide, and other times the Holy Spirit leads in another direction. And then what's most important is that you have this time in solitude with Jesus. And then at the end of 90 minutes, the group returns to the Zoom room to share with one another. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience. And I share this because in our talking about rests and rhythms, it's a good thing to incorporate silence and solitude into your own pace, into your own walk, into your own rhythms. And this month, the digital silent retreat theme is rediscovering rest. And I thought how timely that is, especially with this theme. And so there's a retreat this Saturday, June 12th. I think there might be a few spots open. There's also another retreat on Saturday, June 19th. And so if you're interested, but you're not able to make it this month, there's other opportunities that Laura provides. There will be some later on this summer. And the digital silent retreats are open to both men and women. And so if you're interested, please visit Laura's website and reach out to her for more information. Subscribe to her mailing list. She has a lot of great content, and she has a free download available. So it's something that I believe it will really benefit you. I really hope it's a blessing to you, just as it has been for me. And here's another great rest opportunity. I am excited to share this with you. I encourage you, mark your calendars for Tuesday, June 15th, next Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're going to have another live, and it is with Deanna Mason of Refreshed Moms. And she is joining me for uplifting chats. And we are going to talk about spiritual rest. Now, I wanted to make sure that I gave you a heads up about this for a few reasons. Our next podcast episode releases on Thursday, June 10th. And so we have it every other week now, the podcast releases. And so this week's podcast episode that releases with Deanna, we're talking about uplifting rest. And we had a great conversation where she shared a part of her story. We also discussed different aspects of rest. And she also shared about some upcoming experiences that she has through Refreshed Moms, which is her ministry. And one of them is a spiritual rest mini sabbatical, which is a virtual experience, and it's designed to help mom leaders enjoy rest, rest from work, rest from the kids, rest from responsibilities, and it's kind of stepping away for a few days to reconnect with God and to just renew themselves spiritually. And I actually am going to be a part of this experience. I'm one of the speakers, and I'm going to be talking about finding God in our limitations. But Deanna's doing something she's offering something really special for the Mission Uplift family. From Thursday, June 10th, the day that the podcast episode goes live, through Friday, June 18th, Deanna is going to be offering a special discount for this mini sabbatical experience. It's going to be $100 off the whole experience, and that's for anyone in the Mission Uplift family. And so I encourage you to listen to the podcast on Thursday when it releases, and then join us next Tuesday on June 15th when we chat more in depth about spiritual rest and about the mini sabbatical experience. And I'm going to have a specific link for you that will be in the show notes and on social media, and it will be in the description next week in the video with her. A link for anyone who might want to take advantage of this opportunity, whether it's for you, if you are a mom leader, or it's a mom that you know. And I think it's just a really incredible opportunity, especially with everything that we are talking about this summer, the timing of it, with uplifting rest and rhythms, and it's a great opportunity. And so I invite you to join us next Tuesday, June 15th at 7 p.m. Central, and we will have just an uplifting chats with Deanna Mason. And so I'm excited. I am excited for you all to join me on this journey this summer. I thank you for taking a few moments to watch this video just as we kick off the summer with uplifting rest and uplifting rhythms. If you have any questions, any ideas, anything that you want to share about, please feel free to visit the website or on social media. There's also a place on our website where you can share prayer requests, and just encourage you to lean in and to join us on this part of the journey as we uplift the importance of rest, as we share about uplifting rest in our own lives, as we learn to lean into Jesus and trust Jesus more, and to experience him in this way. And so thank you so much for visiting tonight. I look forward to connecting with you soon. If you haven't already done so, please connect with Mission Uplift on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. Visit our Patreon page and maybe pray about joining our community there. And I look forward to connecting with you in the near future.